Hi there. Okay, so in this video, I'm just going to be quickly going through and explaining how to solve quadratic equations. Okay, so quadratic equations, right? So quadratic equations that we're going to be solving in this video. Okay, of the form, right? Quadratic equations of the form. Okay, these are equations in which we have a term in x squared with the coefficient a plus or even minus a term in x with the coefficient of b and a term in c which is a constant, and this is equal to 0. Okay, so this is the standard form of any quadratic equation. Right, before we get into solving quadratic equations, I just need to quickly introduce what we call the zero factor rule. Okay, so the zero factor rule kind of says this, right? So it says if a, a certain a times a certain b is equal to 0, then what it means is that it's either a is equal to 0 or b is equal to 0. So one of them is a 0. Okay, now with that said, let's get into a few examples of how we are going to solve quadratic equations. Okay, so in this video, I'm going to be solving quadratic equations using the method of factorization. Okay, so the first example is to solve for x, something like this, all right, where we've got x squared plus 5x is equal to 6. Okay, now this equation has to go into that standard form over there for us to be able to solve it. Okay, because you see it's got a term in x squared and a term in x, and this is the constant that is on the other side, so we need to bring everything on the same side. Now, if you would remember your reverse operations, this is a positive 6. So if I want to remove positive 6 from this side and bring it over to that side, that means I'm going to subtract it over that side here. Okay, so by inverse operations, we will see that this becomes x squared plus 5x then minus 6, and then this is equal to 0. Okay, now as it is now in the standard form of a quadratic equation. Okay, so we now do this like what I did in the previous video when we are factorizing quadratic expressions. So this is a quadratic expression that we have to factorize. Okay, so we are going to find factors of this constant here, the negative 6, okay, that add up to positive 5. Okay, I'm thinking 6 and 1 here, and because the middle term is a positive, so that means the bigger number, which is the 6, is the positive and the 1 is the negative. Okay, so we're just going to factorize them like what we did. All right, so this is going to be x plus 6 factors with x minus 1, and this is equal to 0. Okay, now we're going to invoke our zero factor rule and say, okay, because of the zero factor rule, so one or two things is going to happen. X plus 6 is the one that is equal to 0, the first bracket here, or x minus 1, the other bracket, is the one that is equal to 0. Okay, so let's solve each of these one by one. We're going to use our inverse operations again to say, okay, if x plus 6 is equal to 0, then if I'm going to take this plus 6 over to the other side, then that means x is going to be equal to 0, that's there already, minus that 6. Okay, so which means x then is equal to negative 6. Right, we're going to do the same thing here. If x minus 1 is equal to 0, it means if I take this minus 1 over, it's going to end up being plus 1, so it's going to be x is going to be 0 plus 1, which is equal to positive 1. Okay, so I've got my two solutions for this quadratic equation. Okay, now let's also take another example. Okay, so we got another example like this where we're going to solve for x, right? An equation that looks something like this. Alright, so we've got 2x squared plus 5x minus 3 is equal to 0. Okay, now this part here, the 2x squared plus 5x minus 3, is a standard quadratic trinomial. So we're just going to factorize it like what we did in the previous video, where I'm going to take 2 multiplied by 3. Okay, so I'm going to find factors of -6 that add up to +5. Okay, I'm thinking 6 and 1. Okay, and because the 5 is a positive, so that means 6 is positive, the 1 is negative. All right, now if you remember in that previous factorization video, the link to that video is there in the description. Okay, we had two methods of factorizing things like these. All right, so in the first method I showed you something like this, where we're going to take 2x squared and then we're going to plus that 6x, so we're going to break positive 5x into positive 6x minus x. Remember, we don't put 1 in front of x. Okay, minus 3 is equal to 0. Right, this is when we're going to group these. Okay, so we put these into two groups and factorize each of the two groups there. Okay, so between 2x squared and 6x, you can see that our common factor is 2 and x. Okay, so then we say 2 divided by 2 divides x, dividing into x squared is x, plus 2 dividing into 6 gives us 3, x dividing into x, that cancels out. Okay, now there's nothing to factorize there, so we're just gonna put it in a bracket. But point of caution here, if there's a negative sign outside, then the sign inside the bracket has to change. So this minus sign has to change into a plus sign. Okay, and this is equal to 0. Now we can see that x plus 3 on here and x plus 3 on there are common. Okay, so we are just going to factorize the x plus 3 outside the brackets, and when we do that, factorize x plus 3 from there, the remaining 2x. Factorize x plus 3 from x plus 3 will remain with a 1. Okay, this is equal to 0. Right, this is the one method. Now remember, there was the other method, okay, the one which you called slide divide and bottoms up. So same thing, we still find factors of -6 that add up to +5, which is 6 and -1. Now in that method, if you still remember, we had two brackets. Okay, we put x in both brackets, we put x in both brackets. Okay, then we say, okay, x plus 6 and x minus 1, if you still remember. Okay, and then we divide by the coefficient of x squared on here, which is 2, divide by the coefficient of x squared on here, which is 2. Okay, now we can see that this becomes x plus 6 divided by 2. Okay, and we know that's 3, so that one is simplified. But that 1 over 2 we can't simplify. So what we are going to do on that one is we are now going to bring this denominator of 2 up. Okay, and it becomes before the x. Okay, so that we now have a coefficient of 2 in front of x and then minus 1. Okay, alright, this is equal to 0, this is equal to 0. Okay, so as you see, it gives us the same factors. So whatever method we use, what we do know is that our factors is x plus 3 multiplying by 2x minus 1 being equal to 0. Okay, so we're going to use our zero factor rule now and say, okay, this means x plus 3 is the one that is equal to 0, or this means 2x minus 1 is the one that is equal to 0. Okay, so let's solve this one. So x plus 3 equal to 0, the inverse operations. So x is equal to 0 minus 3, because the inverse of plus is a minus, and x is equal to -3. Okay, so that one is sorted. Inverse operations again. So -1, if we take it to the other side, it adds. Okay, so 2x is equal to 0 plus 1. Okay, inverse of minus is a plus, which means 2x is equal to 0 plus 1, which is 1. Divide by 2 here, so that these cancel. Divide by 2 there also, because that's what we do in an equation, which then means x is equal to a half. Okay, so now we've got our two solutions here, x equal to -3 or x equal to a half. Okay, so we have just solved our quadratic equation. Okay, so I've just solved these two examples using the method of factorization. There are two other most popular methods that are used also to solve quadratic equations, and I will be discussing those in my next video. So if you find this video helpful, please don't forget to like it, and please subscribe to this channel and click on the notification button. And thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next video.